So today I am working on installing a shiplap faux wall on the back wall of our RV. We're starting our remodels, and this is our first project. Now we are installing the shiplap on the back wall because for our RV, which is a mid-bunk series, this back wall is a main focal point from the front door. And if you ever talk to an interior designer, they always mention that you're trying to set focal points in each one of your rooms to help draw people's eyes to wherever you want them to go. Well, for us, we're wanting from the front door for our focal point to be the back wall, so that when people come into the door, their eyes are drawn across the room and to the back. So first, let's talk about our wall. So this is our back wall, and let's talk about what is behind our back wall. So the front is just a small 5mm veneer with about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of foam behind it until you get to the metal exterior wall. Now, most RVs are probably manufactured this way, but the easiest way to figure that out is to remove your electrical, and then you can look inside where they punched a hole in through the electrical, and that will allow you to see what you're working with behind your shiplap. So with that being said, since I do have a 5mm veneer with foam behind it, I am going to use a Loctite glue behind the shiplap to adhere it to the wall, as well as drive in some brad nails. If you were inside a house, which with my 9 years of building, the trim carpenters would mark the studs in the wall, and they would be driving nails about every 16 inches, and they're trying to hit the wood behind the sheetrock. Well, here you don't have a block or a piece of wood to drive your nails in, so I'm using the combination of a construction adhesive with the nails to make sure that my shiplap doesn't fall off the walls. So to show you an example, we're in a Grand Design Solitude 377 MBS, and Grand Design does a great job at manufacturing, but you can see that they've had to drive in nails about every 2 to 3 inches to keep the trim from falling off the wall. Well, I don't want to do that in my shiplap. First, I don't want to be able to see it, and second of all, I don't want to have to prep every single nail hole every 2 or 3 inches. So my goal is to hide my nails behind my molding, or to separate the nail pattern further out so that I'm not prepping and sanding and painting so many nail holes. The second thing we are using for our shiplap is 1/4 inch plywood. Now this is great because the plywood gives you the look of shiplap on the front, and I love shiplap. I think it's great because it gives a lot of texture, it's not overpowering, and it does great on being a back focal point for what you're going to do up in front with furniture and other kind of decorations like drapes, pillows, rugs, all the above. So the 1/4 inch is great because it's for 2 reasons. First, in the RV, it's super important for all of us that we don't put a lot of weight inside our RV, and a 1/4 inch plywood is not very heavy. Second, it's great because your window reveals are only about 1/4 inch as well. So as soon as you take the plywood and you stick it up to the window, it's about even with the window, which is great for an install. You don't get a real deep looking window inside your shiplap. Now, I've heard some people talk about getting nickels and using that for spacing in your shiplap, which is an awesome idea. But if you don't have a bunch of nickels, these guys are the best. If you look up the size of a nickel, it's about 1.52 millimeters, and guess what a 1/16 inch gap tile spacer is? 1.5, so they're almost identical. So these are what I'm going to use to space between my pieces of shiplap. Now, I've started from my top. Now, you hear from other people, they always say start from the bottom. Well, the reason they're usually saying that is because they have a tall wall, and getting the board level at the bottom is easier than at the top. Now, the thing about my wall is I know that my top piece will be seen more than my bottom piece. So I don't want my small cut to be up top. I want a full 6-inch board, because when I measured out, I know there's going to be one board that's going to be about 3 inches, and that's the board that I'm putting down at the bottom to keep that one, the one that's the smaller board, and have my full board at the top. So if I had a full wall and nothing that was really going to be hiding the bottom, I would probably start at the bottom. Obviously in an RV, there's one thing is that the ceilings aren't very tall. When we were building houses, we would always have the trim carpenter start at the bottom, because you're almost like you're looking at like a 10 to 12 foot wall. Well, the human, or the average human eye, is only about 5.5 to 6 feet. You know, for women, you're talking about like maybe 5'2" to 5'6". So, but in an RV, you're looking at ceilings that aren't very tall. So people's eyes are a lot higher inside an RV, is where I would start from the top instead of starting at the bottom. So once you get all that squared away, it's really easy to install the shiplap. Show you real quick. So take my Loctite glue inside my squeeze gun. Now, if you can see it, I run a little wave pattern right down the whole board. Give me 1 second to finish this. Okay, so real quick, while I'm installing that wall, I wanted to talk to you about 2 things that I did before I got started. First, we got the 1/4-inch plywood from Lowe's. And the great thing about getting plywood from Lowe's is that you can get them to rip down your boards. So a piece of plywood comes in 4x8, which actually works out great for our RV because the width of the wall is exactly like 8 feet 1 inches. So the board fits perfectly for the width. Now, I went with a 6-inch shiplap. I've seen people go all the way up to an 8-inch shiplap. Now, I got about 8 boards per 4x8 at Lowe's, because the boards are about 4 feet 1 inch, which gives you about an 1/8 inch cut for each board. So if you do 6 inches, you get about 8 boards. And Lowe's will cut and rip down your boards for you before you bring them home. Second thing is I want to talk to you about painting your back wall before you get started. Now you wonder, why would I paint this wall before I install wood over it? Well, if you can see here, there's gaps between the shiplap, and our original wall is gray. And the last thing we want when everything is said and done is for this gray to bleed through these lines. So we went ahead and we actually paintbrushed the wall with our color that we're going to use for the shiplap. I marked about every 6 inches, and then I had the kids paint it with a paintbrush. If I was here doing it by myself, I would just roll the whole entire wall. It would go a whole lot easier instead of having to take the extra effort of marking and using a small brush. But this for us was the easiest way to keep it from being a total mess. Okay, so I got my board installed. As you can see, I got the spacers spread out probably about every 8 or 10 inches. And when I set the board into the wall, I will push it in and push up to make sure the spacers are tight and get me a good 1/16 inch gap between each board. Now, earlier we had talked about I had started at the top. When I first got going, the very first board, I spent some real good time making sure that that first board was level, because as soon as that first board is level, I can use my spacers from there on out to make sure every other board is level all the way down to the bottom. Now, if you start at the bottom, it works the same way as if you were going to the top. So, and you can also see I'm putting in at the very end a 1x2 molding to cover the gap between this wall and the shiplap. I put 1, 2, and 3 nails here at the edge to hold up, and then I went about every probably 12 to 16 inches across the board with the Loctite glue behind it, and it should hold nice and firm. And when you're rattling down the road, it should keep anything from falling off. Make sure you comment below, because we'd love to hear everybody's experience or any questions. Talk to you guys later. Bye.